So hello everyone, I am Avni Gupta and today I'll be presenting you a topic polycystic ovarian syndrome. Actually it's the syndrome which is very much prevailing today not only in India but in world. So we definitely need to know about this topic and 1 out of every 5 females in India who are coming to the ovary, they are definitely diagnosed of PCOS. So 20% of the population is diagnosed of PCOS. So rather it's not a disease, rather it's a condition which is like having different ways to represent itself. So seeing about PCOS, what is PCOS basically? So PCOS is actually the most common endocrine disorder and it's mostly related to the reproductive age group females. So about 4 to 12% of females are affected by PCOS. It's also called as Steen-Levenshtein syndrome. Why? Because the scientists who actually discovered it. So these are the scientists who discovered. Now what's the basic pathology behind PCOS? So PCOS is because of the excessive androgen production in the body from the ovaries. So mainly it's from the ovaries, it can be from the adrenals but mainly it's from the ovaries. So therefore it's also because of the excessive androgen production. Now the most common age group, as I've already told you, it's the reproductive age group. When we proceed, we can also understand it can be from the prepubertal age group also. So the androgen levels, the normal androgen levels, we know it's from 20 to 80 nanograms, but in case of PCOS, it is less than 200 nanograms. Now the features which we see is actually hirsutism. I'll be taking hirsutism later in detail, but hirsutism is actually what? It's the excessive hair growth, male-like hair growth pattern, and it's the sexual hair growth mostly. Again, we can see the male pattern baldness. We can see the increased LDL levels, decreased HDL levels, which leads to hyperlipidemia, and definitely in future, this female would be having heart disease. So now, coming to the pathophysiology of PCOS, now we can see this beautiful flowchart here. This flowchart actually explains what is happening in PCOS. So we have to look into it very carefully. Now we already know the PCOS, the basic pathology is excessive androgen production. Not only androgen and testosterone, but also there is excessive production of androestradiol, which is from the ovary mainly. It can be from the adrenals, but to a very lesser extent it's from the adrenals. It's mostly from the ovaries. Now we can see it leads to hirsutism, it leads to acne, it leads to follicular atresia, and we also know there is aromatization occurring in the adipose tissue, where we know that the androgens are converted into estrogen, which is mostly E1 estrogen. And we also know there is lipid profile alteration, and we know there is hyperlipidemia. In future, the female would be having heart disease. Now we will be seeing this thing in detail. That is the androgens which are getting converted into estrogen. Now we know in this thing what happens, we'll be seeing the effect on various hormones. What is happening? The effect of estrogen on various hormones. So we know that there is increased level of estrogens because we started our story with increased level of androgens. So now this increased level of estrogen, as we all know from the normal menstrual cycle, it will be having a negative feedback on FSH. So naturally the FSH levels would go down, and the FSH is to LH ratio, it will be 1:2 or 1:3, definitely because FSH is low. Now this FSH will be actually preventing the stimulation of this aromatase enzyme in the adipose tissue. So the conversion of this androgen into estrogen won't happen. So again the androgen levels will be very high. Now talking about LH levels, we know that estrogen will be having a positive feedback on LH, and therefore the levels of LH will be raised. Now coming to this basic property which LH does is, we know that the LH will be stimulating our theca cells. These theca cells are responsible for the secretion of androgens. Now what happens? The LH levels are raised, so definitely there will be theca cell hypertrophy. When there is theca cell hypertrophy, excessive amount of androgen is being produced, and therefore we can say there is increased androgen production. This is one way how LH works. The second way the LH will be working, now we already know this thing, in normal menstrual cycle what happens? The LH surge will be seen on the 14th day, but in PCOS, this antral cavity, it gets the LH from the very beginning. So what happens now, that there is decrease in the mitotic division of these granulosa cells, and also we know there is degeneration of the follicles. So definitely there is no LH surge because from the very beginning the LH levels are elevated. So continuously the LH levels are elevated in this. So definitely when there is no LH surge, obviously there is no ovulation, so there is anovulation. Now there is no ovulation, there is no corpus luteum, definitely the progesterone levels would come down. Now when the progesterone level come down, the female would come to you with the complaints of oligomenorrhea, secondary amenorrhea. She rather comes with the complaint of heavy irregular bleeding, which we call as menometrorrhagia. So these are the complaints with which she comes. She also comes to the OPD with the complaint of infertility. Naturally, because there is no ovulation, the ovum is not released, so there is infertility. Rather, we can treat this infertility very nicely. We can actually give her the ovulation inducing drugs, and we can treat it very easily. But still she comes with this complaint. And when we undergo an ultrasound, what happens is we can actually see these follicles, they are overgrowing, they're abnormally growing, and you can see the growth of these follicles in the form of cyst. Now this cyst has been formed in the form of a periphery of the ovary, and they actually appear like a necklace pattern. I'll shortly show you about that. So it appears like a necklace on USG. So this is now the third effect which we'll be seeing is the endometrial hyperplasia. Now what happens, because there is increased estrogen levels, the endometrium will be undergoing hyperplasia. So what is there? There are chances of endometrial cancer in future. Moreover, there is more chances of breast cancer in a female. So we can see how many systemic disorders are leading from PCOS. So definitely it's a condition which needs to be treated like at the early stage, because we have to prevent the future related risk factors. Now here we can see very easily. Now see, in this we can see these are the two graphs, and now we can see normal menstrual cycle, what is happening. You can see this purple line. You can see on the 14th day this LH is peaking. That is, the LH surge is happening at 14th day in a normal menstrual cycle. But what happens in case of PCOS? As I already told you, the LH levels are constantly elevated. Why? Because it's elevated from the very beginning. That's why we are saying there is no LH surge in this, and naturally the ovulation won't occur. So you can very easily see now the difference between the LH levels in both the cases. Now coming to hirsutism, which is one of the most important clinical feature. Now what is the cause of hirsutism? We definitely know the cause of hirsutism is excessive androgen production. It's mainly from the ovary, and to a lesser extent is from the adrenals. Now what is there? We know this thing that the testosterone, it is bound to the sex hormone binding globulin. It is bound to that, and when it is bound, it's actually considered to be biologically inactive. Now what happens in many cases, this testosterone is not bound to the globulin, so that becomes biologically active. So therefore what happens, any factor which would be decreasing this SGBG would be causing to increasing the levels of free testosterone, and naturally when the free testosterone would increase, our androgen levels would increase, and naturally that will lead to hirsutism. So there are various hormones which can actually lead to increase and decrease in these globulin levels. Now the one which is actually increasing the sex hormone binding globulin is actually your estrogen. Estrogen would actually increase it. Now for suppressing it, I have a beautiful mnemonic here, that is All India PG Council. You can remember by this. All India PG Council consists of androgen, insulin, progestin, growth hormone, and corticosteroids. So these will be suppressing your SGBG. So what would happen? Naturally your free testosterone levels would not be raised. Now there is a very nice grading given by grading for scoring the hirsutism, which is a modified Ferriman-Galley score, in which there are 11 sites, and we are actually marking these sites from the score of 0 to 4. But now, as we are saying it's modified, we have actually excluded 2 parts from it, that is forearms and legs we have removed. So currently we are just having 9 sites, and we'll be scoring these 9 sites from 0 to 4 in hirsutism. Now you can see here the treatment of hirsutism. Now see, the treatment of hirsutism is very important. You have to give her, if she comes to you with the complaint that I'm having excessive male-like hair growth, you have to give her OCPs. OCPs are the drug of choice in this, okay? So you'll be giving these oral contraceptive pills for 6 months. Now again after 6 months she's coming and telling you there is no improvement, there is no response. So what you will do, you will give her 5-alpha reductase inhibitor, you will give her finasteride. Again she's coming and telling there is no improvement. So you will give her androgen receptor antagonist, you will give her spironolactone and other drugs you will give. Again she is telling there is no improvement, you have to give her GnRH agonist. Now if we talk about a post-menopausal female, we can give her this, it's basically a cream which is eflornithine hydrochloride. So what is this doing actually? This is actually a ornithine decarboxylase inhibitor. So this enzyme is responsible for the cell division of the hair follicles and for their function. Now what if I actually inhibit that enzyme? If I am inhibiting the enzyme, obviously my rapid hair growth won't occur, and that would be treated. But if some females, they want like permanent hair removal, they can go for lasers, but again it has its own side effects. So we can very easily see hirsutism cases here. We can see like on the beard part, it's having like male-like hair growth. We can see on the upper lips, and this grading we can see like 9 sites now in the modified scoring pattern. Now coming to acne, which is another clinical finding seen. Now acne vulgaris, it's a clinical finding which is seen in adolescents. And now we know that what is the pathogenesis behind this? See, because of hyperkeratosis, there's excessive keratin production. Now this excessive keratin production will be actually blocking your follicular openings. So definitely what would happen, there will be sebum overproduction. The sebum would get accumulated in that, and that would appear as like acne outside. And there is also proliferation of this bacteria, which is Propionibacterium acnes. Inflammation can also be one of the cause of it, and actually finally it would lead to scarring. We can see acne here. So you can see how prominent acne or acne vulgaris is being seen here. See. Now starting with insulin resistance plays a very important role in PCOS. Now what is insulin resistance? We know it is actually the reduced glucose uptake to a certain amount of insulin given to a patient. So if certain amount of insulin is given, that is not adequately being taken up by the body. And we all know that 70 to 75% of PCOS, they're actually being affected with hyperinsulinemia. They have insulin resistance. So naturally majority, like a major chunk of females would have hyperinsulinemia. Naturally, as we all know, insulin and androgens are best friends. So if there is hyperinsulinemia, hyperandrogenism would definitely occur. How can it occur? It can occur in two ways. Now, how can it occur is like it can stimulate the synthesis of these androgens through LH. So if this LH increases, naturally the androgens would also increase. And secondly, it can also decrease the sex hormone binding globulin. If that would decrease, again our free testosterone won't be increased, and naturally our androgenic effects would be prevented. Now we can also detect this insulin resistance. How? We can actually do this by a formula: serum fasting blood sugar by serum fasting insulin, and the ratio actually comes like less than 4.5, and the normal serum insulin is more than 25 international units per ml. Now we all know this thing that it's not just the obese female who are having this hyperinsulinemia. Rather, both obese and lean can have this hyperinsulinemia in case of PCOS. It's just that the insulin sensitivity in case of the obese female is less. Why? Because in the adipose tissue, what happens? These insulin receptors, there's so much of adipose tissue that these insulin receptors are not that sensitive for the insulin to come and bind. So definitely the sensitivity in these obese patients would be decreased. And we all know this in this hyperinsulinemia can also lead to a very characteristic finding. When a patient comes, we can actually see these hyperpigmented velvety patches in the nape of the neck. We can actually see it in the axilla region. We can see it in the below the breastline or under the thighs, which is known as acanthosis nigricans. We'll be seeing the pictures also. That is acanthosis nigricans, characteristically seen in case of insulin resistance. Very important to know. And acanthosis nigricans is more common in case of obese females. So whenever we see a normal weight female and an obese female, the chances of this acanthosis would be more in case of an obese female. Now the take to home message is that this insulin resistance and hyperinsulinemia, these are the causes of PCOS. They are not the end results. Hyperinsulinemia will cause PCOS. PCOS will never result into hyperinsulinemia or diabetes in future. So that is very important. And the complications, we know that female can suffer from diabetes mellitus, mostly type 2 in future. So we actually, this ACOG have recommended a test that is a 2-hour OGTT, that is your oral glucose tolerance test, in which 75 grams of glucose is given to PCOS patients. So this is about insulin resistance. Now the hormones in PCOS. Now this is just a revision of what I have told you. I have already explained you the pathophysiology. Now what the hormones which have increased and which are decreased in case of this PCOS. Now I have already told you that LH levels would increase. Why? Because there is increased estrogen levels, and actually this has a positive feedback on LH, so LH would increase. And androgens are also increasing, that I have already told you. Now when androgen increases, again your estrogen, especially your even estrogen, will also increase. LDL levels, I know that it leads to hyperlipidemia, definitely it will increase. With this anti-Mullerian hormone, to just make a note here, is at puberty what happens, the granulosa cells of these small follicles would increase, and these granulosa cells of these small follicles would actually will be secreting this anti-Mullerian hormone. So definitely this AMH would also increase in case of PCOS. Now the list of decreased ones, I told you that the increased estrogen levels would have a negative feedback on FSH, so FSH would go down. I told you that the progesterone levels would go down because there is anovulation. HDL levels would go down, that I also told you, and the sex hormone binding globulin in general, it also goes down. So that is about increase and decrease. Now sometimes it's also asked, like in PCOS, which hormones are normal. So see, mostly in case the TSH, prolactin and inhibin, they are normal. Although in a very few patients we can see their levels are also increased, but mostly they are normal. Now come to the diagnosis of PCOS, very very important. Now we have known, okay, this is the clinical findings in PCOS, we have seen the female and everything. Now we have to diagnose it. Now for diagnosis, there is a very important criteria called as Rotterdam criteria. Now any of the two of these following should be present for diagnosing it as PCOS. Now what is the criteria we'll see? First is hyperandrogenism. So clinically, if we can see a female is coming with hirsutism, acne, these androgenic factors, if she's coming, clinically I can tell, okay, she's having PCOS. Secondly, biochemically I can check her androgen levels, testosterone levels, serum testosterone can be tested for that. Second is ovulatory dysfunction. She's coming to me with a complaint that I'm having amenorrhea, I'm having irregular cycles, I'm having heavy cycles. So that is ovulatory dysfunction. And next we can go for a confirmatory test, that is we can go for a USG. On a USG, we can actually see that in either one of the ovaries or both the ovaries, there are like 12 or more than 12 cysts we can see. That the size of the cyst is less than 1 centimeter, or they can range between 2 to 9 mm. and the volume of this ovary is more than 10 cc. So this is actually the diagnostic criteria. If any of these two are present, then definitely we will be telling that the patient is PCOS. Now we can see the ultrasound. We can see how beautifully this necklace appearance of the cyst, you can see this is the follicular growth seen in one ovary, and in both the ovaries you can see the necklace appearance here. So this is a characteristic USG of a PCOD female. Now some of the important points which you should know is that many times you are confused that obesity, sometimes we just see that the person is obese and we mark her as PCOS. No, obesity is not a criteria, because I told you Rotterdam criteria, there is no obesity criteria given, so it's not a criteria. LDL to HDL ratio, again, that's not a criteria. The necklace pattern seen in USG, again, you cannot say on the basis of that she is having PCOS. There can be some other etiologies related to that. And PCOS, it's a misconception that it's seen only in case of obese. No, it can be seen in case of lean females also. And mostly we are seeing that it is seen in the reproductive age group, but it can also be seen in the pre-pubertal age group. Now think about this, a female who has not even attained her puberty is still having PCOS, how it can be? So that the etiologies which are, or the risk factors which are being related to it, like she might have low birth weight when she was born. So she was less than 1.5 kgs. So definitely that is one of the cause. Then early onset of adrenarche. What is adrenarche? We know that it's the age when the adrenal gland will actually start producing the androgens. If before 6 years the adrenal glands have matured to form the androgens, again that's a risk factor for PCOS. Then obesity with acanthosis nigricans. To make a note here is, I'm not talking about macrosomia. That is, the child is of low birth weight initially, but in her puberty, when she's reaching her puberty, she has started gaining a lot of weight and she has become obese. And heterosexual precocious puberty is also one of the reasons. So now we also know that this familial inheritance is seen in case of PCOS. So whenever a female is coming with all these complaints, we will be asking her that if she is having a family history of this thing or not. If she is telling that my mother also have irregular cycles, my mother also has these hirsutism and all, then definitely we can suspect that this is a case of family history and she can have PCOS. And the gene which is mutated here is CYP21 gene. Now to make a very important note here is, which we get confused a lot many times, is whenever we see the USG and if we see that the ovaries are of normal size, we say she is not having PCOS. But imagine a case, a female is coming to the OPD telling me that I am having hirsutism, I can see the excessive growth over the upper lips, I can see the male-like growth pattern, and I can also, she's also telling me that I'm having irregular cycles. So already these two criteria have fulfilled. I can see hirsutism and she's giving me the history of irregular cycles. So already two criteria are fulfilled. So I can mark her as a PCOD patient. But when I go for a confirmatory USG, what I see is that the ovaries are of normal size. So it means being the ovaries of normal size, still she is a PCOD patient. So this can happen, like ovaries can be of normal size in case of PCOS. So remember this point, it's very important. Now coming to the next, the syndromes which are associated with PCOS. Now there are mainly two syndromes which we'll be seeing. One is the Heron syndrome and the other is the metabolic syndrome. Heron syndrome, where HA stands for hyperandrogenism, IR stands for insulin resistance, and AN stands for acanthosis nigricans. So that is what is Heron syndrome. Coming to the next is metabolic syndrome. Now any three of these five following should be present if it is a metabolic syndrome case. So we can see the abdominal obesity, the waist size should be more than 88 centimeter. Then triglyceride levels are raised, then HDL is decreased, the BP is also shooting up, fasting blood sugar and the postprandial are also at a higher risk. So definitely we can see from here only she is subjected to heart disease, she is subjected to hypertension, she is subjected to diabetes mellitus. So these systemic conditions we can see here that this includes the metabolic syndrome. Now we can see acanthosis nigricans, we can see here in the nape of the neck, in the axilla region we can see. Now here we can see the waist size. I've already told you if it's more than 88 centimeter. Then I've told you about the insulin sensitivity. See, in case of obese PCOS female, the sensitivity has decreased here. So you can see the graph. The obese PCOS is having the least insulin sensitivity. Now coming to the complications of PCOS. Now actually I have categorized the complications into two types, like the short term and the long term. Now the short term is the one which I can actually treat it. I can treat it easily. Like if a patient is coming with infertility, I can treat it easily. I can give her some ovulation inducing drug and I can treat her. Second, if she is coming with hirsutism, again we can treat her. Then if she is coming with irregular cycles, again I can give her OCPs, then I can treat her. And the long-term complications which I've already told you before, like the heart disease, endometrial carcinoma, breast cancer, plus minus ovarian cancer, diabetes mellitus. If she's obese, she might be subjected to more episodes of depression. Then sleep apnea is there, metabolic syndrome is there, non-alcoholic steatohepatitis is there. Now to just make a note here, like why I have put a plus or a minus sign before ovarian cancer. It has a reason behind it. Actually, when we see the theory of insufficient ovulation, it says that more a female ovulates, the more she has the chances of ovarian cancer, and also hyperestrogen levels would lead to more chances of ovarian cancer. Now, what is happening in case of PCOS? PCOS, it's anovulation, so it's basically protecting us from ovarian cancer. So we can say there is no ovarian cancer chances. But on the other side, I've already told you there is increased estrogen levels. These increased estrogen levels have a risk of ovarian cancer. So that's why I've put a plus and a minus sign here. I hope you have got the idea. And to make a very important note, this is mostly we get like stuck in the MCQs. Osteoporosis is not, it's not because of increased levels of estrogen. Why? Osteoporosis would never be a complication of it because the estrogen levels are already increased, and osteoporosis, we know the causes decreased estrogen levels. So that can never happen in PCOS. Now coming to the management part, which is very important. Now I have seen the patient, I have diagnosed her, I have known what the conditions are. Now coming to the management part. Now the first step for management, be it anything, I would be telling her to reduce her weight. If she is an obese female, without prescribing her any drugs, I would tell her to reduce her weight. So the first step will be weight reduction. Now we'll be seeing it step by step, like how we are treating each and every complication. So firstly, coming to insulin resistance, I've already told you the female is subjected to get diabetes in future. So I have to start her with metformin. Now this metformin, although it has some side effects like GI complications, it has lactic acidosis, but remember this thing that it is non-teratogenic. So what happens if a female comes in a very panic situation and tells the doctor that I have taken metformin, I have conceived now. So what happens, you have to tell that you can relax because it is non-teratogenic. Nothing would happen because of that. Now, secondly, we are dealing with irregular cycles. Irregular cycles and hirsutism, both of them, they have the same management. That is the OC pills, oral contraceptive pills you have to give, which is the first drug of choice. And here, progesterone, mostly we give the progesterone, which is third or fourth generation progesterone. Why? Because they have less androgenic side effects. So that's how we can deal with these OCPs. And naturally, you have to do exercise and yoga. That's very important for reducing weight and naturally for decreasing the chances of PCOS. Very important. And that's in today's sedentary lifestyle, it's utmost important. Now next is infertility. Now infertility, I've already told you, it's because of anovulation, because there was no ovum which was being released. In this case, the first line, second line and third line management would be. Now see, the first line management will be giving her letrozole. So letrozole is a drug of choice now. Earlier there was a ban on this letrozole. Why? Because it was having teratogenic effect. But now this ban has been lifted up, and now again this letrozole is the first drug of choice. After that, a second priority, we can give her clomiphene citrate. I will be taking clomiphene citrate in detail in the next slides. Then comes bromocriptine, which is an ovulation inducing drug. That is our first line management. Now the second line management is, we can give her synthetic LH and FSH, which is a human menopausal gonadotropin. That also we can give from outside. Then if that again the resistant cases are there, we can go for a laparoscopic ovarian drilling, where we would actually remove and burn these theca cells. These theca cells of the ovary is actually been destroyed here. So that is the second line of management. Now the third line of management would be, we have to give synthetic GnRH. That will be a last resortment, because we know nothing has worked till now. So we have to give her a GnRH agonist in a pulsatile manner. Now this for your MCQs, if someone asks you what is the drug of choice in a PCOS patient who is infertile or who is having anovulation, you have to tell the drug of choice. The first drug of choice will be letrozole, and then you can give clomiphene citrate. Drug of choice in now added information is she is obese and she is having insulin resistance. So definitely you have to add metformin along with this letrozole or clomiphene citrate. Now this is important. If the drug of choice in PCOS patients with increased prolactin levels. See, increased prolactin levels, what would happen? You have to give her something which will decrease her prolactin levels, and definitely her PCOS has to be treated. So that is bromocriptine. You have to give her something which can induce her ovulation, because the prolactin levels are raised so much that it is not leading to ovulation. So you have to give her ovulation inducing drug, which is your bromocriptine. So this is how you're going to manage it. Now definitely I am giving this ovulation inducing drugs, but I still know that there are some side effects which can be because of these ovulation inducing drugs. So first side effect is multiple pregnancy. We know there is follicular growth, excessive follicular growth. So definitely multiple pregnancies and twin pregnancies would be suspected. The second is ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome. Naturally the estrogen levels are raised. Menopause-like symptoms definitely would happen. Then this laparoscopic ovarian drilling, as I told you, the theca cells would be destroyed here. So the advantage here is there is no risk of multiple pregnancies because naturally we are drilling those theca cells. But what the disadvantage is, there is premature ovarian failure. How? Now basically some of the surgeons, what they do this enthusiastic removal of the stroma. Now these follicles are actually present in the periphery, they are present in the cortical area. Now some surgeons, they would actually drill the stroma also. So when the stroma is destroyed, the follicles are destroyed and actually it leads to a premature ovarian failure. Now we can see here in this how they are drilling these cysts. This white color is a cyst and they are actually drilling it out. So we have to be very conservative while doing this surgery. Now coming next is clomiphene citrate. It's one of the most important drugs to be taken under PCOS, and I've already told you this clomiphene citrate, we are using it in PCOS patients who are infertile. So this is a selective estrogen receptor modulator, SERM. So you have to know under which category it comes. It has two isomers. One is N-clomiphene, the other is Zu-clomiphene. This Zu-clomiphene is the main isomer, and this is actually an antagonist of the estrogen. So what happens? It is an antagonist of estrogen, so the levels of estrogen would go down. Now when the levels of estrogen are going down, I know that has a negative impact on the FSH, so that would be lost because my estrogen has gone down. So now what would happen? The FSH levels would increase, our follicles would start maturing and the ovulation would be resumed here. So that is clomiphene citrate. Now I know that in that flowchart I told you that okay, it's starting from the ovary and it's coming up till the follicles. So I know that for this to happen, there has to be an intact hypothalamic pituitary ovarian axis. The HPO axis should be intact in this case of if a female is taking clomiphene citrate. Now we know the side effects, again menopause-like symptoms because estrogen levels have gone down. Then actually the menopause-like symptoms will be there. Multiple pregnancy because there is excessive follicular growth, again that will be there. Initial dose you can give 50, you can increase gradually up to 100 mg per day. Now the schedule is you can give it from day 2 to day 6. Like in some doctors can also give you like from day 5 to day 9. Now important here is actually we would do a transvaginal scan, and in this transvaginal scan we'll be actually doing a follicular monitoring. Now what is follicular monitoring? We'll be calling this female on day 10th of her cycle, and on every alternate day we'll be calling her and we'll be checking her follicular maturation. Now what would happen, we would wait for a time when the follicles would actually reach the size of 18 to 20 mm. So we normally know what happens. When they reach, they would ovulate. In case of normal menses, if they reach up to this size, they would menstruate. But as you know, in PCOS nothing of like this would happen. There is anovulation. So we know that this won't happen. So you can see the size also increases 2 to 3 mm per day. So we'll be waiting for that time to occur. So definitely we know that for this ovulation to occur, we need a LH surge also. But this clomiphene is only having the effect on estrogen. It is having no effect on the LH also. So definitely you can say that in PCOS this won't happen. So we have to actually do a follicular monitoring continuously for checking for this ovulation. And now we need LH because I wanted LH surge and there is no effect of clomiphene on LH. So what we will do, we would give synthetic LH from outside, and we would give something which is similar to a LH, that is your human chorionic gonadotropin. We would give an injection of HCG. So it's very commonly asked that what acts like a ovulation trigger. So this HCG injection will be actually acting as a ovulation trigger here. So it's very important. Now here we know that, now see the success rate of this clomiphene is, we know that ovulation can be seen in 60 to 70% of the females who are taking clomiphene. So you know that ovulation will be actually occurring very nicely. But we have seen that the pregnancy rates are very low. The pregnancy rates, why they are very low? Because we know that this decreased estrogen levels. Now definitely these decreased estrogen levels would lead to thin endometrium, that is there is no proliferation. When there is no proliferation of the endometrium, it is not supportive for the implantation to occur also. So that is one reason. Second, this decreased estrogen can also lead to thick cervical mucus. Thick cervical mucus, normally the mucus is very thin, it's watery, it's profuse, so naturally the sperms can ascend easily. But here it's the thick cervical mucus. So that is there. The side effects, we know there can be menopause-like symptoms, like she can suffer from hot flushes, then she can have this OHSS, then she can have multiple pregnancies, chances of ovarian cancer. Now when is the indication for stopping this clomiphene citrate? We are giving her this clomiphene citrate for a couple of times, but now we know that okay, now the female is coming up telling her that I am having a problem in my vision. So she's coming up with visual symptoms. So that is a clear-cut sign that you have to stop giving clomiphene citrate. You actually have to withdraw giving her. So that is about clomiphene citrate. And I really hope that I have made this topic clear, and I think it would be really helpful for you to understand the basics of PCOS. You should know the correlations, what all it can lead to in future. You have to diagnose it at an early stage. In India, it's very much prevailing among the adolescent girls, even in the pre-pubertal age. So definitely it's important to understand the etiology, to diagnose it nicely and to treat at a correct time. So thank you so much.